The fever made the king smaller without making him gentle. Robert Baratheon lay in bed like a storm trapped beneath blankets, breath rasping as if his lungs were filled with smoke. The wound beneath the bandages pulsed with its own ugly life, and the sweat that slicked his skin had the faint sourness of sickness no hammer could strike down. When lightning flashed through the shutters, his eyes snapped open, wild and bright, and for a heartbeat Ned saw the old Robert, the man who had roared on battlefields and crowned himself with victory. Then the light faded, and what remained was pain and rage, tangled so tightly they were indistinguishable. "There at the gates," Robert whispered. Ned leaned closer, keeping his voice low as if quiet could soothe the king. "No one is at the gates," he said. "The storm is only rain." Robert's fingers tightened around his hammer's haft, knuckles pale. The weapon lay across his chest like a talisman. "Lannisters," he rasped. "They're coming. I can hear them." Pycelle hovered at the bedside with a bowl of steaming herbs, trembling so badly the liquid quivered. "Your Grace," the maester croaked. Drink this, it will cool my arse." Robert snarled, then coughed, and the cough dragged pain across his face. Blood spotted his beard. His eyes rolled toward Ned again, suddenly sharp. "Stark," he whispered, voice dropping. "Don't let him." Ned's heart tightened. "Don't let who?" he asked, though he suspected. Robert's gaze drifted toward the door where Barristan Selmy stood like a white wall. "My brother," Robert murmured, and the name carried more venom than affection. "He'll take it. He'll take it all and call it duty." Barristan's jaw tightened, but he did not move. Ned kept his hand on Robert's forearm, grounding him. "No one is taking anything tonight," Ned said. "You will live. You will heal." Robert laughed once, bitter and thin, the laugh of a man who had never trusted promises. "Heal," he whispered. "I don't heal. You must," Ned said. He forced the words through, not as comfort but as command, as if he could order Robert's body into obedience the way Robert ordered men. "You must, because the realm needs you." The realm. The word tasted like iron. Ned had used it so often these past days it felt less like a kingdom and more like a beast they were trying to keep from gnawing off its own limbs. Robert's eyes slipped shut. His breathing rattled. Pycelle dabbed at his brow with a cloth, hands fluttering uselessly. The maester's chain clinked softly, the sound absurd in a room where kings trembled. Ned's voice dropped. "Tell me truly," he murmured, for Pycelle's ears and for his own fear. "Is this wound only infected, or is there something else?" Pycelle's eyes darted, wet and frightened. "Your Grace was drinking on the hunt," he whispered, voice cracking. "Wine, strong wine, thins the blood. The boar. I know what a boar does," Ned snapped, then caught himself. He lowered his voice again. "Could he have been aided?" Pycelle flinched as if struck. "I know," he stammered. "The wound is deep. Infection is common. The gods are not in your bowl," Ned said coldly. Pycelle swallowed. "I have given him milk of the poppy," he said. "A little, to ease pain." Ned's eyes narrowed. Milk of the poppy. Sleep, weakness, dreams that made a man easier to guide. Ned thought of Stannis' sealed document and the way Stannis had looked at Robert's fever like a doorway. "Less," Ned said. "Give him less. I want him awake when he can be awake." Pycelle's hands trembled harder. "He will suffer. He is king," Ned replied. "Suffering is not new." Barristan shifted at the doorway, voice quiet. "Someone is coming," he said. Ned looked up. Footsteps approached, measured and purposeful, not the shuffle of servants or the frantic rush of messengers. The door opened, and for a moment the draft carried rain and cold into the room. Stannis Baratheon stepped in. He did not wear armor. He wore a dark cloak and certainty. His eyes went immediately to Robert's face, to the hammer, to the sweat, and Ned saw no pity there, only calculation and urgency. "He worsens," Stannis said. Ned rose slowly, putting himself between brother and brother like a shield forced into place. "He needs rest," Ned said. Stannis' jaw tightened. "He needs order," he replied, "while he can still give it." Robert's eyes fluttered open at the sound of Stannis' voice. For a heartbeat, clarity sharpened through fever like a blade through fog. "Get out," Robert rasped. Stannis did not move. "Sign," he said quietly, and the word was not a request. "Seal it. Name your heir." Robert's mouth twisted into a smile that was all teeth. "I name you," he whispered. "A cunt." Stannis' face did not change. "Then name someone else," he said. "But name them." Ned's voice snapped. "Not here," he warned. "Not like this." Stannis' gaze flicked to him, cold. "If he dies tonight," Stannis said, "your mercy becomes the realm's funeral." Ned felt anger flare, hot, sharp, unexpected. "And your order becomes its executioner," he shot back. For a heartbeat, the room was held between them. Fevered king gripping a hammer, stern brother demanding ink, northern hand refusing both extremes. Outside, thunder muttered like distant drums. Robert's eyes closed again, breath rasping, and Ned understood the terrible truth beneath all their arguments. They were running out of time, and time did not care who was right. Stannis did not sleep. He sorted. In a corridor below the Red Keep's main halls, where stone held cold and the torchlight made every face look guilty, Janos Slint knelt in chains. His lip was split, and dried blood darkened his chin. He tried to hold on to dignity, but dignity slipped easily when iron bit wrists and your men no longer looked at you like a captain. Stannis stood over him, expression carved from duty so hard it seemed it might cut. "You took coin," Stannis said. Janos licked his lips, eyes darting. "Everyone takes coin," he rasped, desperation swelling. "The watch is underpaid. The city pays you to keep the king's peace," Stannis snapped. "Not to sell his hostages to the highest bidder." Janos flinched. "Hostages," he whispered, and the word tasted dangerous. Stannis leaned forward slightly. "Who gave you orders?" he asked. Janos's throat bobbed. "Lord Baelish," he said quickly, too quickly, as if he thought speaking the name would buy him mercy. "He told me," he said the children weren't safe. He said Robert might." Stannis's eyes narrowed. "He said what would make you act," he said. "And you acted because you wanted gold." Janos swallowed. "I was protecting. You were profiting," Stannis corrected, flat as stone. He gestured, and one of his men handed him a parchment list. Names, places, payments. The skeleton of a conspiracy written in ink and greed. Davos shifted beside Stannis, uneasy. "Lord," he murmured, voice low. "The watch will turn if you break too many men at once. They'll fight like dogs." Stannis did not look at him. "Then they will learn to fear the leash," he replied. Ned arrived then, cloak damp, face grim. Barristan Selmy walked at his side. Ned's eyes took in Janos in chains and the list in Stannis' hand. "What are you doing?"
Ned demanded.
"Cleaning," Stannis said. Ned's jaw tightened. "You are taking the city watch from Baelish," he said. "I am taking it from corruption," Stannis replied. "Baelish is merely the face of it."
Ned stepped closer.
"You will not turn King's Landing into a prison yard," he warned. Stannis' eyes flicked to him, cold. "You prefer it as a brothel," he said. Ned's hand went to the hilt of his sword, not drawing, but the instinct was there. "Enough," he said. "Baelish must be handled carefully. If you strike without proof." Stannis lifted the list slightly. "Proof," he said. "Names, payments, routes through Maegor's holdfast. You wanted proof, Lord Stark. Here it is." Ned stared at the parchment, anger and relief mixing into something bitter. He knew lists could be forged, but he also knew Janos Slint's sweat and fear had a smell you could not fake. Barristan's voice came quietly, steady. "This could justify arrest," he said. "If the king gives the order." Stannis' mouth tightened. The king is fevered, he said. He may not give any order again. Ned's eyes flashed. Then we keep him alive, he snapped. Stannis' gaze did not soften. We keep the realm alive, he replied. Janos Slint coughed, chains clinking. Please, he rasped, eyes on Ned now, pleading. Lord Stark, I'm a loyal man. Ned looked down at him, cold. You tried to steal children, Ned said. Do not speak of loyalty. Janos' face crumpled. Baelish made me, he whispered. Stannis' voice was iron. Baelish did not make you greedy, he said. He simply used what was already in you. He turned to his men. Take him, Stannis ordered, and take this list to the king's hand. Ned reached out and took the parchment, feeling its weight like a dagger. Names, payments, evidence that could topple Peter Baelish if it was real, if it held under scrutiny, if it did not turn into a trap. Davos leaned toward Ned, voice quiet. Be careful, he murmured. Lord doesn't like half measures. But Baelish likes them too much. Ned met Davos's gaze and saw real worry there, honest as salt. I know, Ned said. Stannis watched him, eyes hard. Arrest him, Stannis said. Tonight, before he slips away. Ned tightened his grip on the list. He could feel the keep's corridors above them. The way secrets ran through them like water. He could almost hear Peter Baelish's soft laugh at the idea of being caught. We will do this properly, Ned said. Stannis' mouth curled, faint and humorless. Properly, he echoed. Yes, that is what always saves lives. Ned did not answer. The list's ink seemed to darken in his hand, and he felt, with cold certainty, that whatever they did next would either save the realm from a spider, or snap the web and let the poison drip freely. Varys found Ned the way mist found cold stone. Quietly, inevitably, already there when you turned. It was a passageway near the rookery, where the air smelled of feathers and damp parchment. Somewhere behind a lattice, small birds rustled softly, their tiny movements casting shadows that fluttered against the wall like nervous hands. Varys stood beside the lattice with a small key between his fingers, as if he had been tending cages and not kingdoms. My lord hand, Varys said, voice smooth. You look as if you've swallowed a sword. Ned's eyes were hard. Perhaps I should, he replied. It would be simpler than carrying it. Varys' smile did not falter. Ah, he murmured. Simplicity. We speak of it often in this castle. We rarely see it. Ned held up the parchment list. Stannis claims this is proof, he said. Names, coin, routes. Varys' gaze flicked to the list with polite interest, as if it were a menu. Stannis Baratheon does not claim lightly, he said. He claims like a man laying stones. One day you look back and realize the road has been built. Ned's jaw tightened. And Peter Baelish? He demanded. Is this enough to take him? Varys turned the small key between his fingers. Enough? He echoed softly. In King's Landing, enough is never enough. It must also be convenient. Ned's gaze narrowed. Speak plainly. Varys sighed, theatrical in a gentle way. Lord Baelish is dangerous, he said, and for once there was little humor in it. Not because he has armies, not because he has dragons, but because he makes men do terrible things while believing they chose them. Ned's voice was flat. He tried to take the children, and he will try again, Varys replied. Or he will sell the rumor that you tried, or that Stannis did, or that the king did. Whichever story pays best. Ned felt the old anger sharpen. Then help me, he said. Varys' eyes softened, almost sad. I am helping, he murmured. That is why I have come. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Jon Arryn did not die of age, he said quietly. You already know this. But Lord Baelish is not the only hand that stirred the cup. Ned's stomach tightened. Lisa Arryn, he said, and the name tasted of distance and grief. Varys' smile returned, faint. A widow's grief can be very persuasive, he murmured, and persuasion is Lord Baelish's favorite language. Ned's gaze burned. "Do you have proof?" he demanded. Varys lifted the small key. "I have whispers," he said. "I have frightened servants. I have letters that never reached their destinations. I have a boy who cleans ink from quills and hears too much. Whispers. Always whispers." Ned wanted something solid enough to swing. Down the corridor, Stannis watched, rigid and impatient. Davos lingered near him, uneasy, as if he feared Stannis might decide patience was a luxury the realm could no longer afford. Ned kept his voice low. "If we move now," he said, "Baelish will claim persecution. He will claim the crown is devouring its own." Varys's eyes gleamed. "And if you do not move," he murmured, "Baelish will make the crown devour itself anyway." Ned's jaw clenched. "What do you suggest?" he asked. Varys's smile was soft. "Arrest him," he said, as if naming a simple chore. "But do not do it in a corridor. Do it in a room full of witnesses. Do it with the list in one hand and a confession in the other." "A confession," Ned repeated. Varys tilted his head. "Janos Slint confesses easily when he fears for his neck," he murmured. "And fear is something Stannis Baratheon gives very generously." Ned looked down at the list again, feeling the ink's weight. "If we fail," he said quietly, "Baelish will escape and then—" Varys's eyes softened again, and his voice turned almost kind. "Then he will cut you," he said. "Not with a blade, with your own honor. He will make you look like a tyrant in a man's cloak." Ned's mouth tightened. "And you?" he asked. "What will you do while we bleed?" Varys's smile did not reach his eyes. "What I always do," he murmured. "Try to keep the realm from breaking." Behind the lattice, a small bird fluttered, wings beating in frantic silence. Ned looked down the corridor toward Stannis, toward the hard line of his brother's patience, and felt the trap tightening. If they moved, they risked turning the city against them. If they waited, they risked letting Baelish slip his knives into places they could not protect. He folded the list carefully. "Bring me Janos," he said to Varys, "and bring me witnesses." Varys inclined his head. "As you command, my lord," he murmured, and his gentle smile returned. Too gentle, too smooth, as if even this was part of a script written long before Ned arrived. As Varys drifted away, key glinting in torchlight, Ned felt Stannis' gaze on his back like a weight. The realm did not have room for two kings in one castle. It barely had room for one. The truth sounded different in the rain. Ned stood on the great September steps with a scroll in his hands and water running down his cloak. The city below him was a shifting mass of wet faces and flickering anger, candles replaced by damp torches and clenched fists. The High Septon stood beside Ned, crystal crown catching what little light the storm offered, looking less like a man and more like a symbol made flesh. Barristan Selmy and a line of gold cloaks held the lower steps, shields raised, spears braced. Their line looked thin against the crowd's volume, and Ned could feel how easily the city could overwhelm iron if it decided iron was its enemy. Stannis watched from the side, arms folded, face hard. He did not look at the crowd like a shepherd. He looked at it like a problem that could be solved with sharpness. The High Septon lifted his hands and called for quiet. The crowd's roar softened into a restless murmur, hungry, skeptical. Ned broke the seal on the scroll and began to read. He did not soften the words. He did not dress them in poetry. Truth, he had learned, was sharp enough without ornament. He spoke of the lineage book. He spoke of the investigation Jon Arryn had begun. He spoke of the confession Cersei had given, her own admission of adultery, her children's parentage. He spoke carefully of treason, of deceit, of the crown's right and the faith's witness. When he reached the part that named the children not Robert's, a wave of sound rolled through the crowd. Gasps, cries, angry laughter, sobs. A woman screamed the name Cersei, as if it were prayer. A man shouted lies, and another shouted, "Seven curse her," and the words collided like thrown stones. Then stones actually flew. The first one struck a shield and bounced away, splashing water. The second hit a gold cloak's shoulder with a dull thud. The third whistled past Ned's ear and shattered against the Sept's stone. Barristan's voice snapped. "Hold!" The gold cloaks tightened, shields rising. The crowd surged forward a half step, and Ned felt the air change, the moment when people stopped listening and began tasting violence again. He raised his voice, forcing it to carry through rain and fury. "This is not the king's pleasure," he shouted. "This is the realm's protection. The children are kept alive. They are under guard. No harm will come to them by the king's command." The High Septon lifted his hands, voice rising in prayer. "The seven see," he intoned. "The seven judge. Let not wrath turn you into the stranger's servants." Some in the crowd bowed heads. Others spat. A thin chant began, uncertain, not yet unified. "Seven, seven." Stannis' gaze narrowed. He moved a step closer to the guard line, as if ready to push it forward into the crowd and break their spine with fear. Ned saw it and felt cold. If Stannis ordered a charge on these steps, the faith would never forgive it. The city would remember. Tywin would use it. Everything would burn. Ned turned his head slightly, voice low but sharp. "Do not!" He hissed towards Stannis without looking at him. Stannis' voice came back just as low. "If they surge," he murmured, "we break them." Ned's jaw clenched. "If we break them here," he whispered, "we break the crown too." A woman near the front began to weep, crying out the mother's name. A Septon stepped forward and held up a seven-pointed star, trembling. The crowd's chant steadied, not into rage, but into something like prayer. "Seven, seven, seven." The stones stopped, slowly, as if the crowd remembered it had hands as well as fists. The gold cloak's shields lowered a fraction. Barristan's posture eased, though his eyes remained hard. Ned finished reading. His throat ached. Rain ran down his face, indistinguishable from sweat. He rolled the scroll and held it up, showing the seal, showing the ink, showing that this had been spoken in the light the faith demanded. The High Septon stepped forward and raised his hands again. "The king has given the faith witness," he declared. "Let the realm now give the king obedience. Let not hunger turn to sin. Let not anger turn to murder." Some in the crowd bowed. Some turned away muttering. Some stayed, faces still hard, still doubtful, but quieter. Ned exhaled slowly, relief thin as thread. The city had not erupted. Not today. That was all he could claim. As he stepped back from the edge of the steps, his eyes met Stannis's for a heartbeat. Stannis's face held no gratitude, only calculation. Ned understood then. Stannis had watched this not as a moment of faith, but as a test. And the next test would not be held on holy steps. It would be held in blood and stone, behind closed doors, where mercy was harder to defend. Peter Baelish met accusation the way he met everything, with charm sharpened to a point. He lounged in the small council chamber as if he owned it, wineglass in hand, boots crossed, posture relaxed in a room where men had screamed and died in lesser times. He smiled when Ned entered, and the smile was so easy it made Ned want to strike him just to see it falter. "My Lord Hand," Peter said warmly, "you look drenched. I hope the gods appreciate your performance." Ned did not answer. Barristan Selmy stepped in beside him, white cloak clean despite rain. Stannis followed, rigid, eyes cold. Varys was already seated, hands folded, expression mild as if this were a routine meeting about tariffs. Behind them, Janos Slint was dragged in, chains clinking, face pale. Peter's eyes flicked toward Janos with the faintest hint of irritation, like a man noticing a servant had spilled wine. "What is this?" Peter asked, smile still in place. Ned spread the parchment list on the table. Names, payments, routes, the skeleton of a scheme written in ink and greed. "This," Ned said, voice flat, "is what it is." Peter leaned forward slightly, gaze skating over the list. He did not look surprised. He looked amused, as if the list were a child's attempt at imitation.
Ah, petit murmure.
A list? How dangerous. Stannis' voice cut in like steel. "You ordered the city watch to move the children," he said. Peter blinked once, smile gentle. "Ordered?" he echoed. "My lord, I do not order the city watch. I advise it. I fund it. I keep it from starving. Captain Slint here may have misunderstood." Janos Slint made a choking sound. "You told me," he rasped, desperation spilling. "You told me to move them. You said the king." Peter's smile sharpened. "Janos," he sighed, and the softness in his voice was almost affectionate. "You were always a little slow. That's why you needed guidance." Janos's face twisted. "You paid me," he hissed. "I pay many people," Peter replied smoothly. "That is what the master of coin does. If coin is proof of treason, then the realm is treasonous." Ned's jaw tightened. "You stirred the riots," he said. Peter's eyes gleamed. "The riots," he murmured, "stir themselves. Hunger is a loud conductor." Stannis stepped forward, gaze cold. "Enough," he snapped. "You will be taken into custody." Peter's smile did not move. "Custody," he repeated softly. "By whose authority? The king's? A king fevered in bed? Or yours, my lord? An authority you have not yet been given." Stannis' jaw tightened. His hand flexed at his side. "By the authority of law," he said. Peter laughed quietly. "Law," he murmured. "You speak of it as if it's a sword you can wave at a room and make men obey." Varys cleared his throat softly, almost apologetic. "Lord Baelish," he said. "Captain Slint's testimony aligns with other whispers." Peter's gaze flicked to Varys, and for a heartbeat the warmth in his smile cooled. "Whispers," he said. "Of course, I should have known. Little birds pecking at crumbs." Ned's voice was hard. "You will answer for this," he said. Peter leaned back, unhurried, as if enjoying the view. "Answer," he repeated. "To whom?" "To you, Lord Stark, who has no taste for this city's realities. To Stannis Baratheon, who would hang half the court if they forgot to bow correctly. Or to the king, who swings a hammer because it makes him feel strong." Stannis' eyes burned. "Take him," he ordered to the guards at the door. Peter lifted his wineglass slightly, the motion casual. "If you take me," he said softly, "you take the realm's accounts with me. You take the city's pay. You take the coin that keeps the gold cloaks from turning into bandits." Ned's gaze did not waver. "Coin can be counted by others," he said. Peter's smile widened faintly. "Can it?" he murmured. "Or will it vanish into pockets the moment I'm gone?" Barristan's voice came, calm as law itself. "Enough," he said. "You will come peacefully." Peter's eyes narrowed, and for the first time Ned saw something like real danger beneath the charm. Peter set his wineglass down with care. "Very well," Peter said softly. "If you insist on making me a martyr, I will come." Janos Slint exhaled in relief that lasted only a heartbeat. Peter's gaze slid toward him, and the gentleness returned. "Too gentle." "Janos," Peter murmured. "You were always useful in one way. You made a fine shield." Janos's eyes widened, confused. The door to the small council chamber opened suddenly, and a gold cloak messenger stumbled in, soaked and frantic. "My lords," he shouted. There's fighting at the river gate. Lannister men. Somebody says they came in with wagons." The room snapped. Stannis turned sharply. Ned's stomach tightened. Barristan's hand went to his sword. Peter Baelish smiled. In the chaos of shouted orders and clattering boots, he moved, not running, not panicking, but slipping sideways like a man stepping through a door he had already opened. Ned lunged, grabbing for Peter's sleeve. Peter twisted just out of reach, voice soft in Ned's ear. "Good men always look at the wrong hand," he whispered. Then he was gone, vanishing past the doorway as men surged toward the gatehouse alarm. Ned stood still for half a heartbeat, fury and dread flooding him. The riot at the gate could be real, could also be another distraction. Either way, Peter Baelish had escaped. Stannis' voice snapped. "Seal the keep," he roared. "Find him." Ned's eyes burned, but he forced himself to breathe. They had tried to catch a spider in a room full of doors, and the spider had done what spiders always did. It had slipped into the walls. Renly Baratheon learned quickly that smiles did not stop thunder. Storm's End was a fortress built to spit at storms, and tonight it did exactly that. Wind screamed against its walls. Rain hammered stone. Lightning flashed through high windows, briefly turning faces into pale masks. Stormlords gathered around a table. Men hardened by weather and war, their armor damp, their hands scarred. They did not trust King's Landing. They did not trust the Reach. They trusted strength and the smell of blood. Renly stood at the table's head, cloak heavy with rain, jaw tight with a determination that felt almost desperate. Loras Tyrell stood at his shoulder like a polished blade, bright even in gloom. "We cannot hesitate," Renly said, voice cutting through wind. "Tywin Lannister burns the Riverlands. The faith stirs the city. If we do not stand together now, we will be picked apart one by one." A broad-shouldered lord snorted. "Stand with who?" He demanded. "With your brother who kills queens in the night? Or with the other brother who would hang men for breathing wrong?" Renly's smile flashed, strained. "With the crown," he said. "With House Baratheon." Another lord leaned forward. "And if the king dies?" he asked. "He's wounded. Everyone's heard." "What then?" Renly's throat tightened. He could feel Stannis' shadow even here, a cold presence on the edge of every question. "We keep him alive," Renly said quickly. "And we end Tywin before he can make the realm forget who sits the throne." Loras shifted beside him, eyes sharp. He placed a raven scroll on the table, seal broken. Mace Tyrell's seal, heavy with wax. "My father will bring banners," Loras said, "if the marriage is agreed." The Stormlords murmured, interest sharpened. A Tyrell queen meant grain. It meant knights. It meant power. Renly seized the opening. "The Reach feeds the realm," he said, "and the realm is starving for certainty. A marriage binds the Reach to us, calms the city. It gives the crown strength." A lord with a scarred face spat. "Strength," he muttered. "Or a leash. Tyrells don't come without strings." Renly's eyes flashed. "Every alliance has strings," he snapped. "You're not children. You know how this works." Lightning flashed again. For a heartbeat, Renly's face looked older, harder. The softness of youth burned away by necessity. "We ride," Renly said, voice firm. "We gather Stormlands men. We march toward King's Landing not to threaten it, but to stand beside it. Tywin must see that the West cannot break the crown with fire alone." The scarred lord studied him, then nodded slowly. "If you march," he said, "we march. But if your brother Stannis tries to name himself king while Robert still breathes..." Renly's smile returned, thin. "Then Stannis will have to deal with me," he said. Loras's gaze flicked to him, and something fierce and proud lived there. Stormlords shifted, sensing steel beneath silk. As men began to agree, grudgingly, Renly felt the storm inside him steady slightly. He could gather banners. He could bring men. He could bring the Reach. But as the thunder rolled and the hall's torches flickered, Renly could not shake the thought that haunted him like a ghost. He was racing not only against Tywin, but against time. Because in King's Landing, Robert Baratheon lay fevered. And if the king died before Renly arrived, no smile and no marriage could stop Stannis Baratheon from claiming the realm in the name of law. Tywin Lannister's camp smelled of oil, leather, and quiet certainty. Tents stretched in ordered lines like a city made of canvas. Campfires burned in disciplined circles. Men sharpened swords, repaired bridles, ate in silence punctuated by the occasional low laugh. The Westerlands did not gather like a mob. They gathered like a machine. In the largest tent, Tywin stood over a map, fingers resting on the Riverlands veins. Rivers and roads that would carry armies like blood through a body. Red ink marked burned villages. Not because Tywin needed reminding, but because he liked to see consequences in visible form. Kevan Lannister stood beside him, face tight. A messenger waited near the tent flap, holding a letter with a seal Tywin recognized without needing to touch it. Jaime's seal. Tywin took it with calm hands and broke it. The wax cracked. He read without expression. When he finished, he set the letter down. Kevan's voice was low. "What does he say?" he asked. Tywin did not look up. "He says Cersei is dead," Tywin replied, as if repeating a weather report. "He says he is chained. He says the children are held. He says I should be careful." Kevan's jaw tightened. "Careful," he echoed, bitter. Tywin's eyes lifted at last, cold. "Careful does not mean gentle," he said. "It means effective." Kevan exhaled. "Stannis has blockaded the sea," he said. "Supply ships are being taken." Tywin's gaze remained steady. "Then we take roads," he replied. "If the sea is closed, we open the land with fire." Kevan hesitated. "The faith stirs King's Landing," he said. "There were riots." Tywin's mouth did not move, but something sharpened in his eyes. "Good," he said softly. "A city afraid is a city that demands someone be blamed." Kevan's face tightened. "You want them to blame Robert." "I want them to blame chaos," Tywin corrected. "And I want them to believe I offer order." Kevan looked down at the map. "And Jaime?" he asked quietly. Tywin's fingers tapped once on the parchment. "Jaime is alive," he said. "That remains useful." "And Cersei?" Kevan asked again, unable to stop himself. Tywin's gaze flicked to him, and for a heartbeat Kevan saw something beneath the iron, grief, perhaps, contained and buried. Then it vanished. "Cersei is gone," Tywin said. "The realm will mourn her if we make it profitable to mourn her." Kevan swallowed. "And the children," he said, "if they are harmed." Tywin's voice was flat. "Then the crown becomes unforgivable," he replied. "Which serves us?" Kevan flinched, hearing the cold arithmetic. Tywin pointed to a bend in the Riverlands. "Send riders," he ordered. "Not to burn now, to gather hostages. Minor lords, River Lords' heirs. We will trade pain for leverage." Kevan nodded slowly. "And King's Landing?" Tywin's eyes narrowed. "We squeeze it," he said. "We cut roads. We buy mouths. We let the faith howl. We let hunger gnaw. And when the city begs for peace, we offer it, at a price." He looked toward the tent flap, where the night outside flickered with firelight. "Robert Baratheon thinks strength is swinging a hammer," Tywin murmured. "He does not understand the strength of making a man ask for mercy." Kevan's voice was rough. "And if Robert dies?" Tywin's eyes remained calm. "Then the realm fractures," he said. "Stannis will claim law. Renly will claim love. Stark will claim honor. And the children will become a banner for anyone who needs one." He leaned over the map, shadow falling across it like a hand. "Prepare," Tywin said, "because one way or another, the lions will have their due." Outside, the campfires crackled, steady and patient. Tywin Lannister's war did not rage like wildfire. It advanced like winter. Beric Dondarrion's second life began without songs. He rode through the Riverlands at night with bandages wrapped around his chest, every breath a reminder of steel and mud and death. His eyes were not the eyes of the young lord who had knelt before a king with fire in his heart. They were older now, haunted, as if he carried part of the grave behind them. Thuras of Myr rode beside him, grin returned and sharper, flaming sword casting orange light across broken fences and blackened timbers. Men followed, fewer than before, ragged cloaks, hollow faces, survivors who had watched death and then watched it refuse to stay. They came to a burned village where smoke still rose from damp ruins. A woman stood amid ash with a loaf of bread clutched to her chest like a child. When she saw them, she flinched. Soldiers always meant taking. Then she saw the crownless lord in bandages, and something in her face changed. Not trust, not hope, something like desperate curiosity. "Are you the king's men?" she whispered. Beric's mouth tightened. "We are the king's justice," he said. and the words sounded strange in his own throat. Justice. He had died for it. Now he breathed for it again. The woman's hands trembled as she held out the bread. "They burned us," she said. "They killed my boy." Thoris's grin faded briefly. "Monsters," he murmured. Beric took the bread gently, as if he feared crushing it. His fingers shook slightly. He remembered, too sharply, the feeling of his own chest splitting under Gregor's blade. He remembered rain on his face and the cold certainty of ending. "We will hunt them," Beric said, voice rough. "We will make them answer." A man behind the woman spat into ash. "Answer?" he snarled. "No one answers. Lords burn. Kings fight. Vidi." Beric's gaze held his. "Not if I can help it," Beric said. The man laughed, bitter. "Who are you to help it?" Beric felt Thoris's eyes on him, felt the weight of being a dead man returned. He swallowed. "I am a man who already died," Beric said softly, "and I do not intend to waste what was given back." Thoris lifted his flaming sword slightly, and the fire hissed. "We take what we need," he said to the villagers, voice carrying. "We pay when we can, we protect when we can, and we burn monsters when we must." The woman stared, tears spilling. "Protect," she whispered, as if the word were an old story. Beric looked over the ruined village, the blackened beams, the bodies wrapped in rough cloth near the Sept's cracked star. His chest tightened with something that might have been grief or might have been rage. "We are not Tywin's war," Beric said quietly. "We are not his fire." Thoris grinned again. "No," he murmured. "We are worse for him." As they rode on, crows circled overhead, arguing in the dark. The Riverlands roads were full of fear and ash, but now there was also something else moving through them. Small, ragged, stubborn. A king's decree had died in the mud. Something harder had risen in its place. The argument returned to the same place all arguments did in King's Landing: power, and what you did with it when you held it. In a chamber off the king's apartments, Stannis stood over a small wooden chest like a man guarding a weapon. Inside lay documents, seals, signet rings, tools that could turn a whispered claim into law. Barristan Selmy stood between Stannis and Ned like a quiet warning that steel still mattered when words failed. Davos lingered near the door, anxious, eyes darting. Marjorie Tyrell watched from the window with careful stillness, rain tracing lines down the glass like tears the castle refused to shed. Stannis's voice was low, controlled. "If Baelish is loose," he said, "then the children are not safe here." Ned's eyes burned. "They are not safe anywhere," he replied, "but they are safest under my watch." Stannis's jaw tightened. "Your watch has already been tested," he said, "and your mercy makes you predictable."
Ned stepped closer.
"Do not mistake mercy for weakness," he warned. "I will not let you ship them to Dragonstone like cargo." Stannis's eyes flashed. "Dragonstone is a fortress," he snapped. "It can be defended by sea. It is away from riots, away from faith mobs, away from Baelish's tunnels. It is also in your hands," Ned shot back. "And you have made your wishes clear." Stannis's mouth compressed. "My wishes are irrelevant," he said. "The realm's stability is what matters." Ned's voice dropped, sharp. "You want the realm stable so you can rule it," he said. Stannis's eyes hardened. "If the king dies," he said, "someone must, and I will not allow Renly to buy a crown with roses." Marjorie's fingers tightened slightly on the window ledge, but her face remained serene. Barristan spoke quietly. "Enough," he said. "The king lives." Stannis's gaze did not soften. "For now," he said. Davos stepped forward a fraction, voice cautious. "Lords," he murmured, "if you tear at each other, Tywin wins. He wants the crown broken. He wants the city desperate." Ned exhaled slowly, forcing himself to unclench his hands. Davos was right. That was the worst part. Tywin did not need to breach the gates if the crown collapsed from within. Stannis's voice turned colder. "Then we make choices," he said. "We secure the children. We secure the city's coin. We secure the succession. Ned's jaw tightened. Not while Robert still breathes, he said. You will not turn his fever into your ladder. Stannis' eyes were ice. And you will not turn his fever into your excuse for delay, he replied. A muffled cough sounded from the king's bedchamber beyond. A wet, harsh sound that reminded them what the argument truly circled. A man dying in pieces. Ned's shoulders stiffened. If Robert has a lucid moment, he said, voice tight, I will speak to him. He will name his heir in his own voice with witnesses. Not forced, not coerced, not scribbled while he shakes. Stannis' gaze held his. And if he never has that moment? He asked. Ned's throat tightened. Then we will do what we must, he said quietly. Stannis' mouth did not move, but something like satisfaction flickered in his eyes. Not joy, never joy, but the satisfaction of a man hearing the world align with his logic. Barristan's hand tightened near his sword, not drawing, but warning. We are still brothers under one king, he said softly, as if reminding them of a truth the castle itself was trying to forget. Stannis looked toward the king's door, face hard. Then let the king speak, he said. Ned turned away, dread heavy. He could feel the moment approaching like thunder, inevitable, uncontrollable. And somewhere within the walls, Peter Baelish moved unseen, smiling in the dark, because every fracture between honorable men was a crack he could widen with a whisper. The rescue came the way treason always came in the Red Keep. Quiet, close, and too late to stop cleanly. It began with a dead gold cloak slumped against a wall. Throat cut so neatly the man's last breath had not even had time to become a scream. The torch in his hand had guttered out, leaving a smear of smoke on wet stone. The black cells did not care. They swallowed bodies like they swallowed light. Ned reached the stairwell with ice in his hands and Barristan Selmy at his shoulder, white cloak snapping behind him as they ran. Stark guards followed, boots pounding, torches flaring. The air below was cold and damp, and the smell of blood crawled up the stairs like a warning. When they reached the corridor of cells, they saw shadows moving, men in dark cloaks, daggers gleaming. One had a ring of keys, another held a short sword meant for narrow spaces. They moved quickly, purposefully, heading toward Jaime Lannister's cell like moths toward flame. Jaime stood at the bars, chains still on his wrists, eyes bright in torchlight. When he saw the cloaked men, something fierce and desperate lit his face. When he saw Ned and Barristan rushing in, that fierce light twisted into something like bitter amusement. Finally, Jaime murmured, voice carrying through iron. Ned's voice cut through the corridor. Drop the keys, he commanded. One of the cloaked men spun, eyes wide under a hood. He did not drop anything. He lunged. Steel clashed. Barristan moved like a blade drawn by a practiced hand, his sword flashing in torchlight, cutting the first attacker down with terrifying economy. A Stark guard caught another man's dagger with his shield and drove his sword into the attacker's gut. The man folded, choking. The corridor filled with the sound of fighting breath, boots, steel biting steel. Torches shook, shadows dancing wildly across wet stone. Ned moved toward the man with the keys, ice-heavy and cold. The man saw the Valyrian steel and hesitated, fear flickering. Ned did not hesitate. He swung once, not wildly, not with rage, but with the clean finality of necessity. The blade cut through cloak and bone. The keys clattered to the ground, ringing like a bell in the dark. Jaime's eyes widened, then narrowed. Still honorable, he rasped. Even in a dungeon. Ned's breath came hard. Who sent you? He demanded of the last cloaked man, who had backed against the wall, dagger trembling in his hand. The man's eyes darted, frantic. I, he stammered.
Barristan stepped closer, sword tip lifted.
Speak, he said. The man swallowed, then spat. Lannister, he hissed. Always Lannister. He lunged at Barristan in a final desperate move. Barristan caught him and ended it with a single thrust that slid between ribs as if guided by prayer. Silence fell, broken only by the drip of water and the ragged breathing of men who had just survived. Ned stared at the bodies, at the keys on the ground, at the blood spreading in thin streams across stone. "They're inside the keep," he said softly, dread settling deeper. "They have men inside." Jaime's voice came from behind the bars, low and rough. "Of course," he said. "You thought my father would wait outside politely? He's already at war with your city." Ned turned, eyes hard. "You knew," he accused. Jaime's smile was thin, grief and rage twisting it. "I hoped," he corrected. "There's a difference." Ned bent and picked up the keys. His hand tightened around them until the metal bit his palm. He could feel the red keep above, its corridors, its whispers, its hidden doors. He could feel Peter Baelish somewhere in that maze, unseen. He could feel Tywin Lannister's reach stretching toward the cell with cold patience. And he could feel Robert's fever upstairs, burning through time like a candle burning down too fast. Barristan's voice came quietly. "We must tell the king," he said. Ned's mouth tightened. "If the king can hear," he replied. Jaime leaned close to the bars, chains clinking softly. "Tell him," Jaime whispered, eyes bright with something dangerous, "that lions don't need keys to get into a castle. They only need someone to open a door." Ned stared at him, cold and furious, and understood. The war was not only on battlefields and rivers and seas. It was here in stone corridors beneath the throne, where a single cutthroat could change a kingdom. And the doors were already opening. The dead lay where they fell, and the black cells drank their blood without comment. Ned stood with ice lowered, the blade's cold sheen catching torchlight in hard flashes that made the corridor feel narrower than it was. The stone beneath his boots was slick, and the air tasted of iron and damp. Barristan Selmy had knelt beside one of the hooded men, turning the body with the careful attention of a man who had seen too many corpses to pretend they did not matter. The intruder's hood had slipped back, revealing a face neither Ned nor Barristan recognized. Young, hard-eyed, a mouth set in stubbornness even in death. A cheap dagger lay near his hand. He had not been here for glory. He had been here for a door. Jaime Lannister stood at his bars like a caged lion, chains on his wrists clinking softly when he moved. His hands gripped iron as if he might bend it with fury alone. The torchlight painted his face in restless flickers. Handsome one moment, gaunt the next, grief and rage taking turns at the surface. "You're late," Jaime said hoarsely, and the bitterness in it was sharp enough to cut. "If they'd been quicker, you'd be reading your king's obituary instead of standing in piss and blood." Ned's jaw tightened. "If they'd been quicker, you'd be dead," he replied. Jaime's laugh was a quiet, ugly thing. "Alive," he murmured, "in chains, while my father burns your realm. Tell me, Stark, how does it feel to hold the king's peace in your hands while it leaks out between your fingers?" Ned ignored the bait. He crouched, careful not to let Isis Point touch the wet stones, and picked up the ring of keys that had clattered from the dying man's hand. The metal was slick with blood. He turned them, checking their cuts. A common ring the kind jailers carried. Not a master key. Not a miracle. "How did they get in?" Ned asked, voice low. Barristan's eyes lifted from the corpse. "With help," he said simply. Ned's throat tightened. "From above," he murmured. Barristan nodded once. A door was opened. Jaime's fingers tightened on the bars until the iron groaned faintly. "A door is always opened," he said. "Men like to pretend castles fall by ladders and siege towers. They fall by keys, by bribes, by tired guards who are promised coin and forgiveness." Ned's gaze cut to him. "And you know this because you've lived it," he said. Jaime's mouth twisted. "Because I've watched it," he replied, and the words carried Cersei's shadow like a stain. "The Red Keep has more secret doors than honest men." A Stark guard stepped forward, torch held high. "My lord," he said, voice tight, "we found this on one of them." He held out a small strip of red cloth, torn and damp. A lanyard, a scrap of a banner. It was not proof of a Lannister house soldier, not in itself. Cloth could be taken, stolen, planted. But in the black cells, nothing was accidental. Ned took it and felt anger burn behind his eyes. "They're inside," he said again, not as speculation now, but as certainty. "Tywin's men, Baelish's men, someone's men." Barristan rose, sword still in hand, and his face was calm in the way only old steel could be calm. "We must change the guard," he said. "Now."
Ned nodded.
"No more gold cloaks down here," he said. "Only my men and Kingsguard." Jaime's laugh scraped out of him. "Your men," he echoed. "A northern lord guarding a southern dungeon, while the realm tears itself apart. What a song." Ned stepped close to the bars, voice low enough that only Jaime would hear. "If you think this rescuer came only for you," he said, "you're a fool." Jaime's eyes narrowed. "Then what?" he hissed. "They came to kill you?" "They came to make chaos," Ned replied. "They came to force a choice." Jaime stared at him for a long moment, then his mouth curled, not quite a smile. He whispered. "That sounds like Baelish, or my father, or both." Ned turned away, heart heavy. Above them, in rooms lit by candle and pride, men argued about law and mercy and the shape of a kingdom. Down here, a single slit throat had nearly rewritten everything. He looked at Barristan. "Get word to Stannis," he said, "and double the watch at the children's doors. Not city watch, not Baelish's men, ours." Barristan inclined his head. "At once." As they moved, Jaime's voice followed them through iron. "Tell your king," he called softly, "that lions aren't the only ones who bite in the dark. Spiders do too." Ned did not look back. He climbed the stone steps out of the black cells, carrying the weight of keys in his palm and the heavier weight of what those keys meant. The doors were opening, and the castle's walls were not the protection he had pretended they were. The small council chamber smelled of wet wool and tired men. They gathered there in the hour before dawn, when the keep's corridors were quieter and the city outside was held down by rain and exhaustion. A map lay spread across the table, stones marking roads and rivers like wounds. The ring of keys sat beside it, metal glinting, and the scrap of red cloth lay like a small accusation. Ned spoke without ceremony. "There was an attempt on Jaime Lannister," he said. "3 men, 1 key ring, 1 dead gold cloak." Stannis' jaw tightened as if the words had physically offended him. "And your conclusion?" he asked. "That they have men inside the keep," Ned replied. "And someone opened a door for them." Stannis' eyes flicked to the keys, then to the cloth. "Baelish," he said, voice flat. Varys' hands folded more tightly over his belly. "Perhaps," he murmured. "Or perhaps someone wishes you to believe it is Lord Baelish." Stannis' gaze snapped to him. "Do not play games," he said. Varys smiled faintly. "I do not play," he replied softly. "I observe." Davos shifted near the wall, face troubled. "If they can reach the black cells," he said quietly, "they can reach anywhere." Ned said, "including the children." Marjorie Tyrell's fingers tightened slightly on the arm of her chair. She had remained silent since arriving, watching the men around the table like a woman watching wolves circle a fire. Now she spoke, voice soft but clear. "Then keep them visible," she said. "Hidden children become rumors. Rumors become banners." Stannis' gaze flicked to her, cold. "Children become banners regardless," he said. "Not if they are seen," Marjorie replied. "Not if the realm hears they are alive and under guard and treated with dignity. The faith will care. The small folk will care." Stannis' mouth tightened. "The small folk care about bread," he said. "Not dignity." Ned cut in before the argument could become another crack. "We move them," he said. "Not out of the keep, not to Dragonstone, but to a place in the keep where secret passages are fewer." Stannis' eyes narrowed. "Where?" he demanded. "The White Sword Tower," Barristan answered before Ned could. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "Under the Kingsguard's watch."
"Under mine."
Stannis stared at him, weighing. Barristan Selmy's honor was one of the few things in King's Landing that could not be bought easily. Finally Stannis nodded once. "Do it," he said.
Ned exhaled slowly.
"And the keep," he continued. "We seal it tighter. We change the guard rotation. We purge any gold cloaks who have been in Baelish's pocket." Stannis's gaze sharpened. "You should have done that already," he said. Ned's eyes flashed. "We tried," he snapped. Baelish slipped. "He's gone." A brief, dangerous silence fell. Varys's voice came soft. "Gone where?" he asked. Ned's jaw tightened. "That is the question," he said. Stannis leaned over the map, finger tapping the city gates. "He cannot leave easily," he said. "Not in storm, not with the city restless. Unless..." His eyes lifted. "Unless he already has a way." Varys's smile was almost sympathetic. "Lord Baelish always has a way," he murmured. Stannis's gaze turned sharp as a spear point. "Then we close every way we can," he said. "Seal the gates. Search the harbor. Arrest any man on that list. Now."
Ned hesitated.
The word arrest sounded simple. In this city, it was never simple. "If we start dragging men in the dark," he warned, "the faith will scream again. The streets will. They will obey," Stannis snapped. "Or they will bleed." Davos flinched, but said nothing. Ned looked at Barristan. "Get the children moved," he said quietly. "Now." Barristan inclined his head and turned to go. Stannis watched him leave, then looked back at Ned. "You keep saying properly," Stannis said. "Properly is a luxury when doors are opening for assassins." Ned's voice was tight. "Properly is what keeps us from becoming the thing Tywin says we are," he replied. Stannis's eyes narrowed. "Tywin will call you unlawful regardless," he said. "He will call you monsters regardless. Do not let his words chain your hands." Ned clenched his jaw, feeling the map beneath his fingertips like a living thing. The realm did not feel like 7 kingdoms anymore. It felt like one brittle object being twisted from too many directions. Varys rose slowly. "If you wish to find Lord Baelish," he murmured, "you should not only seal the gates, you should watch who stops breathing." Stannis's gaze sharpened. "Meaning?" he demanded. Varys's smile was mild. "Meaning the men who belong to him will suddenly feel very lonely," he said softly. "And lonely men seek new masters." Ned understood coldly. The spider's web did not vanish when the spider fled. The strands remained, sticky and dangerous, and now they would be tugged by anyone with hands. "Then we watch," Ned said. Stannis nodded once. "And we prepare," he replied. Outside, the rain eased slightly, but the storm's weight remained. The city held its breath, and in the Red Keep's stone heart, men tightened their grip on power like drowning men gripping driftwood. Moving children through a castle built on secrets was like carrying candles through wind. Barristan Selmy led the way, white cloak muted beneath a gray mantle, sword at his hip, eyes scanning every archway and shadow. Myrcella clutched her cloak tight, face pale, lips pressed together as if she feared sobbing would summon knives. Tommen walked beside her, small fingers wrapped around Barristan's gloved hand, trembling. Behind them came Stark guards and 2 Kingsguard, and behind them, at a slight distance, Sandor Clegane dragged Joffrey by the arm with the rough indifference of a man carrying an angry sack of grain. "Unhand me," Joffrey hissed, twisting. "I command you." Sandor's scarred face did not change. "Command your feet," he growled. "They're the ones stumbling." Joffrey spat a curse and tried to jerk away. Sandor tightened his grip until Joffrey winced. They passed a corridor junction where torchlight flickered strangely, and Ned's unease tightened. He had insisted on being there, walking in the middle of the group, because the children were the realm's tinder and someone was always carrying a spark. That was when he saw her. A Septa stood near the wall with her hood up, hands folded in pious patience. She looked like any woman who belonged to the faith. Plain, damp from rain, eyes downcast. But something in her stillness felt wrong. She was too close to the path, too ready, Ned's gaze caught the small pouch in her hand. Leather, tied with cord, Pycelle's herbs, milk of the poppy, powder, poison. In King's Landing, a pouch could be anything and everything. "Stop," Ned said sharply. The line halted, boots scraping stone. Barristan's hand moved to his sword. Sandor paused, eyes narrowing, sensing threat the way a dog sensed it. The Septa lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were too bright. "My lord," she murmured, voice soft. "I only..." Ned drew his sword in one clean motion, the steel flashing. "Drop it," he ordered. Myrcella flinched. Tommen's grip tightened on Barristan's hand. Joffrey's mouth curled in contempt even as he watched with hungry interest. The Septa's gaze flicked to the children. Too quick, too focused. Her fingers tightened on the pouch. Ned's voice hardened. "Now!" For a heartbeat, she seemed to obey. The pouch slipped from her fingers and hit stone with a soft thud. Then she moved. Not like a woman startled, like a woman trained. Her hand darted beneath her robe and came out with a slim blade. Small, easily hidden, meant for throats, not duels. Barristan stepped forward, fast, but the Septa lunged past him. Not at Barristan, not at Ned, but toward Tommen. Ned felt his blood turn to ice. Sandor moved first. The hound's hand shot out, grabbing the Septa's wrist mid-lunge and twisting with brutal strength. The blade clattered to the stone. The Septa screamed, high and furious, and tried to bite him like a cornered animal. Sandor slammed her into the wall hard enough to rattle torch brackets. "Stupid bitch," he snarled. Barristan had his sword out now, tip at the woman's throat. His face was calm, but his eyes were fierce. Ned stepped forward, voice low. "Who sent you?" he demanded. The Septa spat blood. Her hood slipped back, revealing hair cropped short, not the soft hair of a woman who spent her days in prayer. She laughed, ragged. "Everyone," she rasped. Ned's jaw tightened. He picked up the pouch and untied it carefully. Inside was pale powder, bitter-smelling even through wet air. Pycelle, or someone imitating Pycelle. Ned's stomach tightened. Robert's fever. Pouch like this could end a king. Barristan's voice was quiet. "This is not a Septa," he said. "No," Ned replied, cold. "It's a knife wrapped in prayer." The woman's eyes gleamed. "A knife is honest," she hissed. "Prayer is what men use to pretend they don't like blood." Joffrey leaned forward, eyes bright. "Kill her," he said eagerly. "Cut her throat." Myrcella made a small sound of horror. Tommen pressed his face against Barristan's cloak. Ned turned his gaze to Joffrey, voice like ice. "Enough," he snapped. Sandor shoved the woman down, pinning her with a boot. "What do you want me to do with her?" he growled. Ned looked at Barristan. "Take her," he said, "to Stannis. He'll pull truth out of her." Barristan's jaw tightened. He did not like that truth would likely come with pain. But he nodded once because tonight mercy was a fragile thing that threatened to get children killed. As the woman was dragged away, still laughing through blood, Ned gathered the children closer and resumed the march. The White Sword Tower's door loomed ahead like a promise. Ned kept his sword drawn until the children were inside. Only when the heavy door shut and the bolt slid home did he let himself breathe. And even then, he did not feel relief. He felt confirmation. Someone was hunting in the Red Keep, and they were not hunting grown men. They were hunting symbols small enough to carry. Robert's lucid moments came like lightning, brief, violent, and leaving the air smelling of burned things. Ned returned to the king's bedchamber with Rain on his shoulders and the pouch of powder in his hand. He did not announce himself with grandeur. He pushed the door open and walked into heat and sickness. Robert lay half upright, eyes open, breathing hard. The fever had stolen his color and his softness, leaving only bone and anger. The hammer rested beside him on the bed, his hand never far from it. Pycelle hovered at the bedside, pale and trembling, looking like a man who expected to be accused of murder at any moment. Stannis stood near the foot of the bed, rigid. He turned when Ned entered, and his gaze went instantly to the pouch in Ned's hand. Ned held it up. "Someone tried to reach the children," he said. "And someone brought this." Pycelle's eyes widened in horror. "What is that?" he croaked. Ned's voice was cold. "A question," he said. Stannis' mouth tightened. "And an answer," he replied. Robert's eyes sharpened, focusing through fever. "Poison," he rasped.
Ned nodded.
"Or something like it," he said. "It was meant to be carried, hidden, used quietly." Robert's mouth curled, and the curl was not a smile. "Quiet," he whispered. "Like her." Stannis stepped closer, parchment in hand. "This is what happens when the realm has no certainty," he said quietly. "Men move in shadows. They strike at symbols. If you die without naming." Robert's gaze snapped to him. "Shut up," he rasped. Stannis did not. "Then the city will drown," he continued, voice iron. "Tywin will say you died of your own rage. Renly will claim you promised him something in your last breath. Stark will try to hold the realm together with honor and fail. And the children." Robert's hand twitched toward the hammer. Ned stepped in, placing himself close, voice urgent. "Robert," he said softly. "Listen. Not to him, listen to me. This pouch could kill you. This castle is full of knives. If you want your will respected, you must speak it." Robert stared at Ned, and for a heartbeat clarity burned bright. "My will," he whispered, and the pain beneath it was old. "They stole it." Ned's throat tightened. "Take it back," he said. Robert's breathing hitched. He coughed, and blood spotted his beard again. Pycelle moved forward with a cloth, hands shaking. Robert slapped him away weakly. "I'm not dead," Robert snarled. Stannis placed the parchment on the bed's edge, the royal seal beside it like a heavy coin. "Then prove it," he said. "Sign." Robert's eyes narrowed. "You want my crown," he rasped. Stannis' face did not move. "I want the realm not to burn," he said. Robert's gaze slid to Ned again. "You," Robert whispered, "you'll keep them alive."
Ned swallowed.
"Yes," he said, "as long as I draw breath." Robert's eyes flicked toward the door, where Barristan stood, straight as a vow. "Sell me," Robert rasped. Barristan stepped forward. "Your Grace." Robert's breath came harsh. "Witness," he said. "All of you, witness what I say, in case some bastard tries to twist it." Stannis' eyes sharpened. Pycelle looked like he might faint. Ned leaned closer, his hand steadying Robert's shoulder, feeling the fever heat through cloth. Robert's hand shook as he reached for the quill. It looked absurd in his grip, too small a weapon for a man who had always preferred iron. But ink had its own weight. He pressed the quill to parchment and began to write, slow and angry, each stroke a struggle. Ned watched the words form. Stannis Baratheon. Robert paused, breath ragged, eyes squeezed shut as pain surged. Then he wrote again. "Is my rightful heir." Stannis' jaw tightened, not in triumph, but in focus. He reached for the seal, but did not touch it yet, as if afraid the moment would break if he moved too quickly. Robert's hand trembled. The quill scratched. "And Eddard Stark is to hold the king's peace until the realm is secured." Ned's heart tightened. Protector, regent, the same burden Robert had tried to give him before, in a different world with different names. Robert's eyes opened, fever bright. "No children harmed," he rasped, voice cracking. "Not by me, not by him, not by anyone." Stannis' gaze flicked to Ned, cold, measuring. Ned held it without flinching. Robert pressed the quill down again, scrawling the words with brute insistence. Then his hand slipped, ink blotting. Pycelle made a small, strangled sound. "Your Grace." "Shut up," Robert snarled, and the effort of it cost him. His breath rattled. Stannis moved then, taking the royal seal, pressing it into wax with a steady hand. The stamp landed hard. Final. Barristan leaned in, reading, then nodded once. "Witnessed," he said quietly. Ned felt the room shift as if a door had closed. Not a door of wood, a door of possibility. Robert's will had been written in ink and wax. It would not stop war. It would not heal the king, but it would shape the knives. Robert sagged back against the pillows, breath shallow. His hand reached for the hammer again, finding it like a child finding comfort. Stannis held the parchment as if it were a blade he had finally forged. "It is done," he said. Robert's lips curled faintly. "Good," he whispered. "Now kill the spider." Ned's stomach tightened. "Baelish," he murmured. Robert's eyes closed. "All of them," he rasped. "Kill the lies." His breathing slowed. The fever claimed him again, pulling him under like water. Ned looked at the sealed decree in Stannis' hand and felt the weight of it settle over the room like a crown made of iron. Because now, whether Robert lived or died, the realm had been given a line, and men would bleed to control it. By morning, the Red Keep moved differently. Word traveled fast inside stone. Not the full truth. Truth was too heavy to carry intact. But enough. The king had named his heir. The king had sealed his will. The king's brother now held paper that could become law the moment Robert's breath stopped. Stannis did not keep the decree hidden. He brought it into the throne room like a shield and a warning. He stood before the Iron Throne without sitting it, because Stannis understood symbols even when he pretended to disdain them. Sitting the throne while Robert lived would look like theft. Standing before it with a sealed decree looked like duty. Ned stood at his side, jaw tight, feeling the room's eyes on him. Barristan Selmy stood with the King's Guard, white cloak bright against dark stone. Marjorie Tyrell watched from near a pillar, hands folded, face calm, but her eyes sharp as needles. Varys lingered in shadow, soft and silent, watching as if counting breaths. Stannis lifted the decree and spoke, voice carrying. "By the king's own hand and seal," he said, "I am named heir. Lord Eddard Stark is charged to hold the king's peace until the realm is secured. Any man who acts against this order acts against the king." A murmur rippled. Fear, resentment, relief. Each face chose its own. Renly was not there. Renly was in the Stormlands, gathering banners, and the absence of his smile felt like a missing tooth. Stannis turned his gaze to the gold cloaks lining the walls. "The city watch," he said, voice hard, "has been compromised. Captain Janos is in chains. Any gold cloak found taking coin from Lord Baelish will be arrested." The gold cloaks shifted, uneasy. Some looked at one another like men realizing their friends might betray them. Others stared straight ahead, trying to look loyal enough to survive. Stannis gestured, and Baratheon men stepped forward, disarming gold cloaks at the edge of the hall with brisk brutality. Spears were taken, swords were seized. A few gold cloaks protested quietly because loudly meant death. Ned's mouth tightened. "Careful," he murmured to Stannis. "Humiliation breeds resentment." Stannis's eyes did not flicker. "Resentment is preferable to treachery," he replied. Barristan stepped forward then, voice clear. "The King's Guard remains sworn to the king," he announced, "and to the king's lawful heir." His gaze moved briefly across the white cloaks, testing. Ned watched too, feeling old unease. Men like Ser Mandon Moore were too expressionless to trust. Men like Ser Boros Blunt had always been soft in the spine. The white cloak did not guarantee a white heart. Stannis's gaze swept the hall again. "Lord Peter Baelish is hereby stripped of office," he declared. "Master of coin no longer. He is wanted for conspiracy, bribery, and treason against the king's peace." Marjorie's fingers tightened slightly. Varys' smile was faint and unreadable. "And if he is found," Stannis continued, voice cold, "he will be tried swiftly." Ned's jaw tightened. "And lawfully," he added louder, forcing the word into the hall. Stannis' eyes flicked to him, hard, but he did not contradict. "Lawfully," he echoed, and the word sounded like a concession. A messenger hurried in, breathless, soaked. He bowed low. "My lords," he panted. "The harbor, ships leaving." A small vessel, no flag, slipped out with the tide. Stannis's face hardened. "Baelish," he said. Ned felt his stomach sink. "Or a decoy," he murmured. Stannis's gaze snapped to him. "Everything is a decoy to you," he said. Ned's voice was quiet, fierce. "Everything is a trap in this city," he replied. Stannis turned back to the hall. "Double the harbor watch," he ordered. "Close the river gates at dusk. Anyone leaving without my seal is arrested." Varys's voice drifted, soft as silk. "Seals can be forged," he murmured. Stannis's gaze cut to him. "Then we hang forgers," he said. The hall fell silent again, the kind of silence men wore like armor. Ned looked up at the Iron Throne and felt the weight of it pressing down on them even though no one sat it. Robert's fevered scrawl had drawn a line. Stannis was now using that line to bind the city in iron. It would bring order. It would also bring enemies. And somewhere beyond the walls, Tywin Lannister would be smiling to himself, because a realm that feared its own king's brother was a realm already half-broken. Renly's army moved like a promise and a threat in the same breath. Stormlands banners snapped in the wind, stags on black and gold, while Reach banners streamed beside them, green and gold bright against mud and wintergray fields. Knights rode in polished armor, their horses heavy, their breath steaming. Wagons creaked behind, laden with grain and barrels, because the Reach understood that food was as powerful as swords. Renly rode at the front with Loras Tyrell beside him, and his smile. So often his armor was gone. His face was set, eyes fixed forward, as if he could see King's Landing's walls already and was willing them to arrive before something irreversible happened. A raven sat on his gauntlet, black feathers ruffled by wind. Renly read the message once more, then crumpled it in his fist. "Stannis, decree." Robert's hand, sealed. Renly's mouth tightened until it was almost a line of pain. Loras watched him, quiet. "Your brother has what he wants," Loras said softly. Renly laughed bitterly. "He always has what he wants," he murmured. "He just calls it duty so no one can hate him for it." Loras's eyes narrowed. "Do you hate him?" he asked. Renly's gaze stayed forward. "I hate what he will do," he said. "He will turn King's Landing into a gallows and call it order. He will treat every whisper as treason. He will squeeze until men break." Loras's voice was low. "And you?" he asked. "What will you do when you reach the city?" Renly exhaled. The cold air burned. "I will stand beside Robert," he said, and the words sounded almost like a prayer. "If Robert still lives." Loras's gaze sharpened. "And if he does not?" Renly did not answer at once. The question was a blade, and he could feel how easily it could cut him into what men already suspected he was. Ambitious, hungry, willing. He looked at the banners, Stormlands and Reach, and felt their weight. He had promised lords a cause. He had promised Highgarden a queen. He had promised himself he would not be left behind again. "I will not let Stannis take everything," Renly said finally, voice tight. "Not with ink written by a fevered man. Not while the realm needs something more than cold law." Loras's hand brushed Renly's arm, brief and steady. "Then be careful," he murmured, "because Stannis will not hesitate." Renly's laugh was thin. "Neither will Tywin," he said. Behind them, campfires smoked. Men sang sometimes, soft songs to remind themselves they were alive. But even the songs carried unease. The realm was shifting. Everyone could feel it. Renly looked toward the road ahead and imagined King's Landing. Riots, faith, Stannis with paper in his hand, Ned Stark trying to hold the city together with stubborn honor, Marjorie waiting in silk, and Robert, wounded, burning himself alive with rage. He pressed his heels to his horse and pushed onward. Because if he arrived too late, he would not be riding to support a king. He would be riding to decide which brother wore the crown. Tywin Lannister did not siege King's Landing at first. He strangled it. The Crownlands were softer than the Westerlands. Smaller holds, lesser lords, men who had grown used to the idea that the crown would protect them. Tywin made that idea bleed. A minor holdfast near the King's Road fell without heroic battle. Its gates opened after a single night of fire arrows and the quiet knowledge that no relief would come. By morning, the lion banner flew over the gate. Tywin stood in the courtyard while bound hostages knelt in the mud. Sons and cousins of Crownlands lords, terrified, mouths tight. Soldiers stood in disciplined lines, unmoving. Kevan lingered with a raven scroll. And beside Tywin, for the first time in this war, stood Tyrion Lannister. He looked out of place next to his father's carved certainty, shorter, cloaked against cold, eyes sharp with a cynicism that had learned to survive. His mouth twisted as he watched the hostages kneel. "This is charming," Tyrion murmured softly. "Nothing says, 'I bring order' like kneeling children." Tywin's gaze did not shift. "These are not children," he said. "They are leverage." Tyrion's eyes flicked toward him. "So are we," he replied quietly. Kevan cleared his throat. "Reports from King's Landing," he said. "Stannis holds the harbor. The city watch is being purged. Baelish is declared traitor." Tywin's eyes narrowed a fraction. "Baelish," he repeated. Tyrion's mouth curled. "The little man slipped?" he asked. "How shocking." Tywin did not indulge him. "Where is he?" Tywin asked. Kevan hesitated. "Unclear," he admitted. "A vessel left the harbor without flag. Some say." Tywin lifted a hand. "Rumors," he said. Tyrion watched the hostages, expression dark. "If Baelish is loose," he murmured, "then the city is more rotten than you've accounted for." Tywin's gaze finally turned to him, cold. "Do not mistake rot for chaos," Tywin said. "Rot can be guided." Tyrion's eyes held his father's. "And chaos?" he asked. Tywin's mouth did not move. "Chaos can be blamed," he replied. A bound hostage sobbed softly. One of Tywin's men shoved him, forcing his face back into the mud. Tyrion flinched, a brief flash of anger. "Must we?" he muttered. Tywin did not look at the man. "Yes," he said. Kevan stepped closer, voice lower. "There was an attempt to free Jaime," he said. "It failed." Tywin's eyes sharpened, just slightly. "Good," he said, and the words sounded like a door closing. Tyrion stared at him. "Good," he echoed, bitter. "Because my brother remains in chains? Or because your men are already inside the keep?" Tywin's gaze stayed cold. "Because the attempt revealed doors," he said. "And doors can be used again." Tyrion's mouth tightened. "You want to kill Robert," he said, not as accusation, but as recognition. Tywin did not deny it. "If Robert dies," he said calmly, "the realm fractures. Stannis will clamp down. Renly will posture. Stark will try to hold the pieces together with honor and fail. In that failure, the city will beg for someone who can stop the bleeding." Tyrion's eyes narrowed. "You," he said. Tywin's gaze moved back to the hostages. "Order," he replied, as if naming a virtue. Tyrion exhaled slowly. "And what of the children in King's Landing?" he asked quietly. "Your grandchildren." Tywin's eyes did not soften. "They are alive," he said. "And their survival is useful." Tyrion's mouth twisted. "Useful," he murmured. "The Lannister prayer." Tywin turned, voice steady. "Send ravens," he ordered, "to the Crownlands holds. Tell them their heirs kneel in my courtyards. Tell them that if they wish their sons to breathe, they will close their roads to King's Landing and open them to me." Kevan nodded. "And if they refuse?" Tywin's gaze was cold. "Then they learn what refusal costs," he said. Tyrion looked away, jaw tight. He had seen cruelty before. He had lived inside it. Still, watching it laid out like a strategy made him feel sick in a way wine could not fix. As the lion banner snapped above them and the hostages trembled in mud, Tywin Lannister's war tightened around the capital like a noose, and the city, already hungry and afraid, began to feel the rope. The Riverlands did not know kings. It knew boots, torches, and who screamed first. Beric Dondarrion's band moved through the mud like ghosts that had decided to become men again. They were not an army. They were not even truly soldiers anymore. They were survivors and broken knights and small folk with knives, drawn together by the simple truth that nobody else was coming to save them. They found a Lannister supply wagon on a road lined by bare winter trees. Red cloaks, a few armored men, a driver hunched against rain, and behind the wagon, chained in pairs, small folk prisoners trudging with heads bowed. Beric watched from the trees, breath fogging. He felt the chains in his own memory like a wound. He had died. He had returned. Every time he blinked, he saw Mud and Gregor's sword. Thuras grinned beside him, flame licking along the blade he held. "Ready," Thuras whispered. Beric's voice was rough. "Yes," he said, and he stepped out into the road. His men surged from the trees like hunger given shape. Arrows flew. A Lannister guard dropped with a shaft in his throat. Another guard spun, sword half drawn, and Thuras's flaming blade kissed his face. The man screamed, hands clawing at fire, and fell into mud. Beric moved toward the wagon, sword raised, and he felt something strange inside him. Not the old pride of a king's decree, but a colder, steadier purpose. He did not shout in the king's name. He did not speak of law. He spoke only the truth of the Riverlands. "Drop your weapons," Beric called, "or burn." A Lannister soldier stumbled back, eyes wide at Beric's bandaged chest, at the way he moved as if pain was an old friend. The soldier's gaze flicked to Thuras's flame, and his courage broke. He dropped his sword with a clatter. Another soldier did not. He lunged, swinging hard, and Beric met him.
"Stil ran."
The soldier's eyes were bright with fear and duty. Beric's eyes were dark with something older. Beric knocked the sword aside and drove his blade into the man's shoulder, not killing, but disabling. The soldier screamed and fell. Thuras cut the prisoner's chains with quick, brutal strokes. Iron snapped. Small folk stumbled free, disbelief on their faces. "Run," Thuras barked, grin fierce. "Run before the lions remember they own roads." A woman grabbed her child's hand and ran. A man limped, sobbing, toward the trees. Another stood still, staring at Beric as if seeing a ghost. "Who are you?" The man whispered. Beric's mouth tightened. The old answer, "King's justice," felt too clean for a world this filthy. "We are what's left," Beric said softly, "and we don't kneel." A Lannister soldier fell to his knees in the mud near Beric, hands raised. "Mercy," he begged, voice shaking. "Please." Beric stared down at him. Mercy had almost gotten children killed in the Red Keep. Mercy had not stopped Gregor from carving villages open like animals. And yet Beric felt the weight of death in his chest, and he remembered how it felt to return to breath. He lowered his sword. "Leave," he said. "Tell Tywin his wagons bleed." The soldier blinked, stunned, then scrambled away into rain. Thuras watched Beric, grin fading briefly. "You're learning," Thuras murmured. Beric's eyes stayed on the freed prisoners disappearing into trees. "I died," he said quietly. "I don't want them to." Thuras's flame hissed as rain fell harder. "Then we keep moving," he said. Beric nodded once, and his band melted back into the woods with stolen food and freed lives. Behind them, the wagon burned anyway, a beacon in the rain, small, defiant, cruelly bright. In a war of great lords, Beric Dondarrion's band was a thorn, and thorns did not need crowns to draw blood. The faith did not like being ignored. It liked being obeyed. The High Septon came to the Red Keep again, and this time he did not come with incense and polite admonition. He came with Septons behind him holding 7-pointed stars like weapons, and with the sound of small folk gathering beyond the gates. Candles in the rain, prayers turning into pressure. Stannis met him in a hallway rather than on the Iron Throne steps, because Stannis did not grant symbols more power than they deserved. But even in a hallway, the crystal crown gleamed, and the High Septon's presence turned stone into a tribunal. "You have executed men without faith witness," the High Septon said, voice thin and sharp. "You have seized the city watch. You have purged and threatened and spoken of hanging as if it were prayer. Stannis' face did not move. I have restored order, he said. Order without mercy is tyranny, the High Septon replied. Stannis' eyes hardened. Mercy without order is chaos, he said. Davos shifted behind him, uneasy. He looked as if he wanted to apologize to the gods for standing next to this argument. Ned arrived before the words could become a blade. He stepped between them, rein on his shoulders, face tight with exhaustion. Enough, he said. We do not fight the faith while Tywin burns the realm. The High Septon's gaze fixed on Ned. And yet you allow this, he said, gesturing at Stannis. You allow law to become cruelty. Ned's jaw clenched. I allow nothing, he said. I try to prevent worse. Stannis' voice was cold. Worse is a riot that kills 100, he said. Worse is a city that eats itself. Worse is allowing Baelish's paid men to guide mobs while we debate piety. The High Septon's crystal crown caught a flash of light, and his eyes narrowed. The king promised witness, he said. He promised humility before the gods. The king promised truth, Stannis replied. He did not promise to kneel while the city burns. Ned's voice dropped, firm. The king is ill, he said. His will is sealed. The realm has enough fear without the faith adding more. The High Septon's mouth tightened. Fear is what happens when kings kill queens in darkness, he replied. Fear is what happens when rulers forget they are mortal. Stannis' eyes flashed. And what happens when priests forget they are not kings? He snapped. A ripple went through the Septons behind the High Septon. Their hands tightened on their stars. Outside the gates, muffled through stone, Ned could hear chanting, small folk voices in rain. Not yet a riot. Not yet, but close enough. Davos leaned toward Stannis, voice low. Lord, he murmured. This won't help. Stannis did not look at him. He looked at the High Septon like a man staring at a stubborn law he could not rewrite. Ned made a decision before either side could. I will meet the faith, he said louder. Tonight, I will speak to the small folk. I will promise bread distribution from the Red Keep stores, and the faith will send men to calm them, not inflame them. The High Septon's eyes narrowed. Bread, he said. You think hunger is the only sin. Ned's voice was tight. Hunger makes every sin easier, he replied. Stannis' mouth tightened. And while you speak, he said, Baelish moves. Ned met his gaze. Then you search, he said. But you do not turn the faith into your enemy. Not yet. Not yet, Stannis echoed, and the words sounded like a threat he was storing for later. The High Septon held Ned's gaze a moment longer, then inclined his head slightly. Very well, he said. The faith will watch.
Ned exhaled slowly.
The faith always watches, he murmured. As the High Septon turned away, Septons following like a procession of judgment, Ned felt the hallway's tension ease only slightly. He looked at Stannis, voice low. Do not push them, he warned. If the faith turns fully against the crown, we will not have a city to defend. Stannis' eyes stayed hard. If the crown bends to the faith, he replied, we will not have a realm to rule. Ned felt the truth settle like cold rain. Between lions and stags and spiders and gods, the realm was being pulled apart by forces that all believed they were saving it. Peter Baelish did not flee like a hunted man. He fled like a man executing a plan. In a passage behind a tapestry, where stone corridors ran narrow and old, Peter moved with a lantern's small light in one hand and a boy's fate in the other. He did not drag Joffrey by force. He guided him with words, and words were always Peter's strongest rope. Joffrey stumbled over uneven stone, breathing hard, rage and fear battling in his face. Where are we going? He hissed. This is filth. I want out. I want. You want to live, Peter murmured softly, voice gentle as a lullaby. And you want to be king. Joffrey's eyes flashed. I am king, he spat. Peter's smile was faint. Not in that castle, he said. Not with Stannis Baratheon holding paper and Ned Stark holding swords. Not while your father coughs blood into pillows. Joffrey flinched at the word father. The lie had been spoken aloud too often now for even Joffrey to ignore it, and hatred did not erase doubt. It only covered it. A hooded gold cloak moved ahead of them, lantern held low. The man did not speak. He did not need to. He was paid, and payment was his prayer. Joffrey's voice cracked, furious. My mother would never. Peter's voice slid in, soft, sharp. Your mother is dead, he murmured. And the men in that castle will use you the way men always use boys. As a banner. Joffrey's breath hitched. Then I'll use them, he snarled. Peter's smile widened slightly. There, he whispered. That's the spirit. They reached a small door banded in iron, hidden behind stone that looked like any other stone. Peter produced a key, already warm, already waiting, and turned it. The lock clicked. The door opened onto a narrow stairwell leading down toward the river, toward water, toward escape. Joffrey stared into the darkness below. What is this? He demanded. Freedom, Peter said. A boat. A place where Stannis Baratheon cannot reach you easily. A place where stories can be written before they become truth. Joffrey's eyes narrowed. And you? He asked. What do you get? Peter's smile was gentle. I get to serve, he murmured. As I always have. Joffrey snorted, distrust warring with need. You're a liar, he whispered. Peter's eyes gleamed. Yes, he said softly. And liars survive. Above them, in the keep's corridors, a door opened. Footsteps. A low growl of recognition. Sandor Clegane. The Hound had not been told. The Hound was not part of Peter's plans unless Peter needed him, and tonight Peter did not. Sandor's voice echoed, rough and sudden. Joffrey. Joffrey froze. His breath caught. Fear flared, real fear, because Sandor was the one brute in his world that had always been present, always loyal in the way loyalty was understood by men who had never had much else. Peter's hand tightened on Joffrey's arm, not harsh, just firm. Do not answer, he whispered. If he finds you, he brings you back. And if he brings you back, Stannis Baratheon will decide what you are worth. Joffrey's eyes widened, hatred and terror mixing. He swallowed hard. Sandor's footsteps grew louder, running now. Joffrey, he barked again. The sound edged with something almost like concern, though Sandor would have denied it with his last breath. Peter guided Joffrey down the stairwell quickly. Lantern light shook. Joffrey stumbled, caught himself, breathing hard. Move, Peter murmured. Be a king. Kings don't hesitate. Sandor's boots thundered behind the tapestry above. A shout, guards. Confusion. Doors slamming. Joffrey's face twisted with furious fear as he ran down into darkness. Behind him, Peter Baelish's smile did not fade. It sharpened, because now the keep would erupt with panic. The false prince missing, the city's rumor mill ignited, Stannis furious, Ned desperate, Robert fevered and unreachable. And Tywin Lannister, out west, would hear that the boy who had once been called Crown Prince had vanished into the night. A banner, stolen from the crown's hands, carried into the dark by a spider who understood one simple truth. A realm did not need truth to burn. It only needed a story.